Hello, Dr. Gamble here with another Excel demonstration. Today we're going to look at using Excel to calculate correlation. Also, we will use the Excel function to calculate correlation. So we're going to let Excel use formulas to calculate it, and we'll verify with the Excel function. So this big smiley face is here just to show you that the step-by-step calculation isn't very difficult, and as we progress you'll see why this is a big smiley face. So let me show you what we're working with here. Alright, so the correlation formula is, you know, what is the correlation between the numbers in X and Y, so the values in X and the values in Y. That formula equals the expected xy minus the expected x times the expected y divided by the square root of the expected x squared minus the expected x squared times the square root of the expected y squared minus the expected y squared. So what we are going to do is actually break down each one of these calculations to be able to answer our result. So right here I have some information already, right? And this is actually using the uh, a function that's built into Excel. So we're going to delete this because I'm going to show you step by step how to get all of this information. All right, we're going to delete those cells and let's shift them up, or better yet, let's just get rid of all the borders because that's basically what we're doing there. All right, and these are all of the pieces that we need to calculate. See, right in here, these are all the pieces that we need to calculate. So I'm going to delete that information, and we need to calculate all this information in here also. So I'm going to delete all of this information. So typically what we'll start with is just the values for x and the values for y. So in this particular example, our values for x will be midterms for students 1 through 7, and the values for y will be the finals for students 1 through 7. So if we follow the formula, right, we're going to need x and y, right? We're going to need x squared and we're going to need y squared, right? So we already have x, we already have y. So let's calculate x squared. And the formula for x squared is, we're going to tell Excel we're going to use x, and shift 6 is the caret, and we're going to square it. All right? And we're going to do the same thing for y. Now, one of the things I like to teach with Excel is what I refer to as being lazy, right? So if this particular formula is right here, and it's a square of that, when I drag that over, it's going to tell Excel, well, do the same thing in the next cell over in the same direction. It's a relative copy. And there we have it, right? So just by dragging it, so let me back up, right? I highlight the cell. There's a little marker right in the lower right hand corner of that cell, and I just drag it over. Now mathematically in this column, x, y, so that's saying x times y. So we're going to tell Excel to multiply x and y. So hit the equal sign to tell Excel we're about to do a formula. Do the x times y. And I'm going to just hit the, right? So there we have the x and y. So now that I have these three all set up, again, using the relative copy function built into Excel, I'm going to just highlight the 3 like so, lower right hand corner, and then just drag it down. So now each one of these have been calculated out, and I can just go in there and confirm that they are calculating how I need them to calculate. All right, so when I look at this formula, I have my x, I have my y, I have my x squared, I have my y squared, and I have my xy, right? So there's the xy right there. So now what I'm going to do is I need to know the number of pairs. I'm going to use an Excel function on this. I'm going to let Excel do the counting, right? We know that there's 7 students, 1 through 7, right? But I'm going to let Excel do the counting. So I'm going to use the count function. If count, open parenthesis, and I just need to highlight one set of numbers, right? Because we know that they're going to be in pairs. And then close parenthesis, and we get 7. All right. So now I need to get the sum of x. Right. So let's use an Excel function for that. Equals the sum, and we're going to highlight the values for x. Close parenthesis. Hit OK. And since I'm doing just the variables itself, let's jump over here to column K and do the sum of y. So equals the sum, and highlight the sum of y. Close parenthesis, and look at that result. All right, I'm going to need the sum of the x squares. All right, so let's get the sum of the x squares. And then I will also need the sum of the y squares. All right, and then lastly, what I will need is the sum of xy. Right, and that's the sum of x times y, which is this column. All right, so there we have it. We have our x's, our y's, our x squares, our y squares, and our xy's. So we have every single component that the correlation calculation will need. So now we can start to look at what we can do with Excel, right? So I'm gonna move this formula down here so we can look at it, right? So let me move the happy face down a little bit now. Right, so again, if we look at the formula, right, it's the expected xy, right? So there's the expected xy right there, okay, minus the expected x times the expected y, okay? So minus the expected x times the expected y, that's the number you get, and that is divided by the count of pairs, right? And we also have the square root, the square root of the expected x squared, okay? The square root of the expected x squared, okay, right there, minus the expected x squared, right? So the expected x squared, right there, divided by the count of pairs. So now if we move the happy face down a little bit more, right? So now we're into the, see, so basically what we've done is, okay, so here we have right here the expected y squared minus the expected y squared divided by the count of pairs. So basically what we've done is we've substituted all of these variables with the numbers that they work out to be. So now that we substituted numbers, this dark line just says now we're going to step into some of the calculations, right? So the top part would calculate out to 47,291 minus 46,563 divided by the square root of 46,069 minus 44,960.14, which is this part right here, times, right? That's the times, the multiply right here, times the 48,875 minus 48,223. So that's the bottom half of this calculation. These two right here are the top half of the correlation calculation, and these down here are the bottom half of the correlation calculation. So if we actually work these out, this becomes 728 divided by 850.28, and this lower number is the result of this calculation. So when you divide 728 by 850.28, your calculation is this. And I'm going to hit F2 right now just to show you that, see how it's using those fields. So our correlation is 0.856189, which is a strong mild correlation. Now, we can actually use Excel to verify this, and you would need to make certain that your add-in pack is turned on, right? So if you click on your data ribbon, right, and look over here on analysis to see if the data analysis is there, right? If it's not, click on the Excel icon, click on Excel options, right? Go down to add-ins, come down here, manage Excel add-ins, click go, and this little box pops up. Okay, what you need to make certain is that the analysis tool pack is added in. Okay, so we're going to make certain that the analysis tool pack is added in, and once you do that, the analysis button is there. So now what I'm going to do is actually click on that. It pops up this analysis pack, and what we want to run is a correlation. So I'm going to hit OK. So it's asking me what is my input range. So my input range are the midterm grades. All right, I'm actually going to put the labels in there. Right, so midterm, final, tell it that the first row is a label. Okay, and then my output, I'm going to have Excel place the output right here. Right, and then I just press go. And Excel will automatically calculate the correlation of the values identified. So now when I read this correlation matrix, the midterm to midterm is a perfect correlation. That's why there's a 1 here. And the final grade to midterm has a correlation of 0.856189 with a final to final correlation of 1. So again, coming back over here, looking at our results. So the midterm has a strong mild correlation to the final of 0.856189, and that is exactly what we calculated out using formulas. So I hope you have found this useful, and see, and that's why it's a smiley face, because math really isn't that difficult if you break it down step by step. This is Dr. Gamble. Have a great day.